Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another Mad Meta Magic, where we try to make the magic meta mad. Now, today, I've got one of two deck requests by Miximcz, and it's Shared Fate. So this is a deck that we kind of brewed up a little bit in the Discord. Mixim put a lot of work into it. I did a little bit of practice on stream. I made some slight edits, I think, but we had some success with it. I think one of the big problems that one of the big issues that I had was I replaced River of Tears with Dark Slick Shores, and I should not have done that. Dark Slick Shores coming in tapped is actually an enormously punishing deal. So I have to actually get more River of Tears. One moment. Okay, I'm back. I got the River of Tears. So the River of Tears is definitely better than Dark Slick Shores. That was the last thing that I forgot to change before starting up this video. So what is this deck? This deck is incredibly hard Dimir control with no win conditions except for Shared Fate. Now Shared Fate is a 5-mana enchantment, and what it says is, if a player would draw a card, that player exiles the top card of one of their opponent's libraries face down instead. Each player may look at cards they have exiled with Shared Fate, and they may play lands and cast spells from among those cards. So basically what this says is, once I play Shared Fate, we each start drawing and playing cards from our opponent's decks. So the idea is, if we run out their hand, through hand hate, counterspells, we answer anything they could use to win the game in their hand. We play Shared Fate, then we win the game with their deck, and they're drawing counterspells and kill spells and lands, because we have no other way to win the game. Now, technically, there is one card in our deck that can be used to win the game under edge circumstances, and that is Archmage's Charm. If we are playing against Burn, let's say, and we get down to low life, it might be such the case that we are playing like Goblin Guides and stuff, and our opponent might be able to steal one and smack us with our own Archmage's Charm if they draw 3 blue lands first. It's very corner, so that one I'm kind of discounting as a possible win condition. But other than that, I think the deck is actually seemed to be quite good when we were playing it against certain decks. So I will take this into a league, and I will see you guys in round 1. All right. I think we've got a pretty good opener here, so we will be keeping. We'll be leading on Hand Hate. I have been instructed by Raelin that if I am to refer to this card, I must refer to it as Vintage Playable Telepathy. Because apparently somebody, and I don't remember who, actually plays this card in a Vintage deck. And I think this card is really powerful, and it's very cheap. The problem is it doesn't impact the board or your opponent in any way. And strangely, it's less powerful than Gitaxian Probe, because Gitaxian Probe gives you that information for actually free. It would appear that we are against Amulet, so let's go ahead and lead on a Thoughtseize here. Grazer Saga. Well, I think we gotta take Karn, because otherwise we can't really do anything about that. Pass the turn. So opponent probably going to play Grazer. They put in Growth Chamber. They pick up the castle. Then they play Saga. Now, Saga is not a card I came prepared to deal with. So we know they're holding Castle Garenbrig, one unknown. So play Telepathy. Let's see what's going on over there. And play an island. Pass the turn. Okay, Saga gains its second ability, and we get to see what's going on in our opponent's hand. This is Amulet Titan. So they probably play Sunhome, I imagine. They play Castle. Okay. We draw Polluted Delta. So, yeah, we're just going to go ahead and drown in the Loch immediately, I think, to kill the token. Because now if they go get Amulet and make a token, it's just a 2-2. They drew another Saga. That's really bad for us, because this is a threat we can't Thoughtseize or Counterspell. Okay, opponent plays second Saga. And they've got an expedition map. That's interesting. What land do they want to tutor for? Okay, crack Polluted Delta. Let's get a Watery Grave. Right now, we just need to get Shared Fate down as quickly as possible. And we keep drawing lands. So, play Polluted Delta, because we can at least thin our deck. Pass the turn. Opponent activates map. Vesuva, maybe? Another Saga. Okay, so they're just going to go for, like, Saga beats. They draw a Valakut. Saga gains its ability. They play the other Saga. They go to combat. They attack for 1. Surprised they didn't make a token there. Crack Polluted Delta. Get another Watery Grave. Untap. Come on, Shared Fate. Counterspell. Well, I mean, if they play a Titan, we're ready. But I've got a feeling we're going to die to Constructs. They draw Wooded Foothills. So one Saga ticks up to 3. The other one ticks up to 2. They will be able to make 2 tokens here. We basically have to top deck Damnation now to stay alive. Because they can play Sunhome, or they can play Wooded Foothills and have this Saga activation available. Or they could even play Gruul Turf and just pick up Castle. Okay. This is why I put Damnation in the deck. For situations like these, they pick up Saga so they can just keep replaying it. Okay, we untap. And we draw Vintage Playable Telepathy. So the good news is, I think our opponent has no idea what we're doing. The bad news is, we do not really have an answer for Saga. I do have Surgical Extraction. I could play that. Let me think about this. Surgical Extraction does sort of compete if we're using it to take out win conditions, because with win conditions, we need them in our opponent's deck in order to win. I do want another Thoughtseize, for sure. Inquisition is a lot worse, but not impossibly bad. I think I'm going to cut a Fatal Push, bring in a Damnation, cut another Fatal Push. And I'm going to bring in a couple of Surgicals. Question is, what am I getting rid of to play Surgical? I'm going to stick with just one Damnation, actually, and I'm going to cut a Telepathy. Telepathy is good in this deck, but it's not, like, make or break. It's kind of a meme a little bit. But it does really help you play very hard control, because you know exactly what your opponent has. You don't have to guess. And frequently, like, that's a very strong skill to have in the game of Magic, being able to guess what your opponent has, based on, like, their mana sequence and stuff like that. And that's one of the reasons why Probe got banned, because Probe removed all ambiguity for an all-in on a deck, which was Death Shadow. It drew a card, it lost them life, it advanced their game plan massively, and it let them know if it was safe to just go for the kill. And Telepathy is similar in that regard. And it provides consistent advantage, so like or consistent information advantage. So you know, like, when you need to hold up Counterspell versus when you just need to Thoughtseize versus, you know, if your opponent actually has anything, or if you're just safe to tap out, like that kind of thing. It's very powerful. It's a card that I really like, I just think is bad. And so, like, I'm kind of excited because I get to play it in something. So, 100% we lead on Thoughtseize here. Opponent has Amulet of Vigor, Azusa, Summoner's Pact, Saga. Let's see. I think we have to take Amulet. I think I would much rather have taken Pact or taken Azusa, but almost all of my opponent's lands in hand are tap lands, so like my opponent might have to lead on Colony Garden as an example. We draw an Archmage's Charm, play Drowned Catacomb, pass the turn. Now there's no way they Summoner's Pact super early or anything. Okay, they play Grazer. I could have counterspelled the Grazer, but I don't think it's worth it. They put a Saga into play tapped and play Talaria West. So we know the 3 cards in their hand, I think. Because they just drew a Grazer. Unless I miscounted. I do need a land. I have to be careful with that land, though. Okay, I will draw a Watery Grave as well. I do need to get up to 5 mana. We draw Bloodstained Mire. Okay, no more lands, please. Play River of Tears, pass the turn. This will produce blue mana on my opponent's turn, which will allow me to Archmage's Charm. Now, depending on what my opponent does here, and in what sequence, is going to dictate what my play is. I would really like to Archmage's Charm to draw cards. So, like, if my opponent just plays Hanweir Battlements and leaves up the Saga activation, I think I'm just going to draw cards. Now, if they cast Azusa, and I don't think they should, because they don't have, like, any way to gain advantage off of her, I think I'm going to let this resolve. Like, it's potentially a problem. Okay, because they did have a Growth Chamber. So opponent picks up Talaria West, replays Talaria West. Okay. Then they pass. Let's go ahead and draw some cards. I'm going to Counterspell and a Polluted Delta. So play Polluted Delta. I'm going to fetch a basic island. Because I want River of Tears to produce blue on my opponent's turn. This potentially gives me Counterspell plus Archmage's Charm. Opponent floats mana off of Urza's Saga. Gets Amulet. So they might be going for like a Summoner's Pact play here. They play the Battlements. And then they play Primetime. So Counterspell Primetime. They play a Forest. Last card in their hand is Summoner's Pact, which we're going to need to be able to Counterspell. We draw another Archmage's Charm, so we should be able to Counterspell it. Shock Watery Grave, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. Got a feeling this is going to be a long video. Just because we're playing super hard, one win condition control. I mean, the converse of that is going to be, like, there's the possibility that we just lose to super fast combo or aggro. So the games could be short, so maybe that's a false prediction. Alright, opponent plays Summoner's Pact. So I'm going to go ahead and Drown in the Loch. Okay. So we have no idea what our opponent's last card in hand is. Boros Garrison. Okay. So that's going to let them pick up Talaria West. They can transmute for another Summoner's Pact, and I will Archmage's Charm it. They won't Summoner's Pact on this current turn or my turn. They'll do it after their upkeep next turn, so that they can play a Primetime. So we should be safe to Archmage's Charm to draw cards. What's interesting is they have not been attacking with Azusa. Oh, they get Cavern. Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, so now we can't Counterspell a Primeval Titan, so we need a Shared Fate as quickly as possible. Okay, we do not draw Shared Fate. Untap. We do not draw Shared Fate. Oh, that's pretty brutal. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and draw now. Oh my holy land. Welcome to Only Lands. Pass the turn. We topped off both ops, but like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We've drawn 8 extra cards and fetched once. And they top deck Titan. What is this? What is this luck? Oh my gosh. That should not have happened. And we're just dead. We're actually just dead. Because they can give Primetime haste and double strike. Alright, well, I mean, what are you going to do, right? Damnation would have been nice. Archmage's Charm's still not what I'm looking for. So, it's possible that, there's no tutor we can really play. The problem with a tutor is... Actually, can we transmute? We might have to... Let me read the text on transmute really quick. So this is the problem with playing a single 4-of card. Yeah, so the only tutor we can run, if we wanted to run a tutor in this deck, would be Brain Spoil, which is a 5-mana sorcery that says, destroy target creature that isn't enchanted, it can't be regenerated. But it has Transmute for 1 black, which is discard this card, search your library for a card with the same mana value, reveal it, put it into your hand. Transmute only as a sorcery. And the reason that that's the only tutor we can play is it's the only Transmute for 5, to my knowledge, and Transmute doesn't work off of Shared Fate. So a big problem, and one reason why you can't play some cantrips, like Sleight of Hand for an example, with Shared Fate is Sleight of Hand says look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put 1 in your hand and 1 on the bottom. And if your opponent has your Sleight of Hand, they look at their deck and can potentially get a card that could beat you. So you can't play like Demonic Tutor or a Diabolic Tutor or something like that, because then your opponent will just go get whatever they need out of their deck and win the game with it. You have to play something that takes advantage of the zone that the cards are in with Shared Fate, which is Exile. So because you can't discard Brain Spoil out of Exile, you can't Transmute. off of Shared Fate. So maybe that's something we need to be doing. I thought the card draw would be enough, honestly, but I guess I was wrong. So I guess that means we need to evaluate hands with Shared Fate in them a little bit higher. Honestly, I think this hand is good enough. Against a Lurrus deck, the opponent leads on Arid Mesa into Sacred Foundry. This might just be Burn. It is Burn. Well, Burn is not unbeatable. We're drawing an Archmage's Charm, which is kind of less than ideal. Untap. Play Bloodstained Mire, pass the turn. We will have to fetch a Watery Grave, though, which is unfortunate. Opponent plays a Sunbaked Canyon, goes to combat, attacks us for 2. We will be drawing Shared Fate, but unfortunately, we've got to fetch. Because Shared Fate this early does nothing for us. Let's go ahead and Fatal Push the Guide. Okay, opponent plays an Eidolon. We untap. We draw an island. Play Drowned Catacomb. Pass the turn. Now, we're probably going to drown in the Loch this Eidolon, because we're not going to wait until we get up to Damnation, I don't think. Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate, but it's what we got. So we got to take 2. Opponent takes 2. They resolve an Eidolon. We untap. We draw Drowned Catacomb. The good news is, being strictly 2-color, our mana base is relatively painless, I should say. I was going to say painful, that's wrong. I do want an Archmage's Charm to draw cards. This opponent, I think, played a land. They're attacking for 2. We go to 11. I was really hoping they played a creature. Alright, well, here goes nothing. Put herself in double bolt range when our opponent has 2 red mana. This might actually be death. If this is a Boros Charm, that puts me down to 2, and the only spell I can cast is Shared Fate or Damnation this turn. Bloodchief's Thirst, fortunately, is not helpful. Yeah, we're going to cast Damnation because it doesn't kill us. I'm pretty sure my opponent has a Boros Charm here, which means we're dead to everything. Lightning Helix, okay, we're still dead to everything, but we're not dead to Goblin Guide. We are dead to Boros Charm. Okay. So, interestingly enough, Burn is actually one of the matches I won with this deck. I am going to bring in Flusterstorm. Telepathy is kind of moot here. We're not going to need it, I don't think. Thoughtseize is going to come out. We're going to bring in a Duress instead. And I'm not playing Surgical. I don't really need another Damnation, so we're just going to run it back. The reason we're playing Flusterstorm instead of Spell Pierce, because Spell Pierce technically has more targets, I think is because we didn't have a sideboard to start with, but generally, I think Flusterstorm has more utility against decks in the current metagame. It might need to be Spell Pierce, because they're both kind of bad in the long game, and this deck goes long. Double Shared Fate. All right, we'll keep. Really wish this was a blue fetch. So we are going to start with Inquisition. Opponent brought in Smash to Smithereens, which is actually useless against us. I have to take a Swift Spear here. They represent a huge amount of damage over time. I'm only going to be able to answer 1 on board. And while it's not as big of a damage chunk as Boros Charm is, I think it's still what we got to do here. We draw Shared Fate number 3. Shared Fate Tron. Did you guys know this was a Tron video? I didn't. Alright, pass to our opponent. They shock a Sacred Foundry. They play an Eidolon. Crack Bloodstained Mire. Let's get a Watery Grave tapped. I think if we just draw 3 lands, which is kind of what we need to draw, we just die. So, I don't know what I'm hoping for here. Okay, opponent's going to combat. They attack for 2. Take 2, go to 14. And opponent passes. You draw an Opt. It's a very painful Opt. Second Opt to the bottom. Watery Grave tapped. Pass the turn. Okay. I am going to counterspell Boros Charm here. So it turns 4 damage into 2 damage. If I draw land... Oh gosh, actually if I cast Shared Fate with that Eidolon on board, I'm in huge trouble. Because I would have to draw 2 lands, or like I would have to draw like a red land off my opponent's deck and like a lightning bolt effect, and I just don't have enough life. Yep, that's game. Because they have a lightning helix, and we just die to casting any spell that isn't Shared Fate or Damnation. And we're only holding one of those, and we already just elaborated on the fact that Shared Fate's not going to work. Alright, I'll see you guys in round 3. Alrighty, and welcome to round 3. We will be on the play, which is a pretty big advantage. I will be keeping this. We are against a Lutri deck. That's interesting. So, lead on Inquisition, see what's going on. Let's see. Benthic Biomancer, Jwari Disruption, Vendilion Click. Must be a control deck, like Singleton control? If that's the case, I think I take Click. So the ideal circumstance is my opponent goes Land Biomancer. We opt into a black land and Fatal Push the Biomancer. Okay. So opponent plays their Flooded Strand. They play the Biomancer. We untap. We draw Bloodstained. In that case, I think we can play Telepathy and Fatal Push. So... play Telepathy. Now we don't need to know what their cards are that are revealed. And we can fetch up a Watery Grave and Fatal Push the Biomancer. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They draw Subtlety. They play Spire Bluff Canal, so they have access to Jwari Disruption. We draw Shared Fate, so we opt. Drown in the Loch to the bottom. We need lands. I'm not going to Thoughtseize into the Jwari Disruption. I'm just going to pass. Unfortunately, we did not get a land. Opponent draws Soulscar Mage. So they shock Steam Vents and play Soulscar. We untap and draw Bloodchief's Thirst. So kill Soulscar, pass the turn. We need more lands. Opponent untaps and draws a Spire Bluff Canal. They play their other Steam Vents untapped, presumably to leave up Subtlety. Okay, I really, really desperately need a land. Does that work? Yes, it does work. Play River of Tears, cast a Thoughtseize. Because now if they Cryptic, I can Drown in the Loch the Cryptic. They cast Subtlety. Well, I can Drown in the Loch that too. Then I can take their Cryptic, pass the turn. Opponent draws Consider. They play Spire Bluff Canal before casting Consider. Oh, they're putting Lutri into their hand. Okay, that's fine. We untap. We draw Thoughtseize. Thoughtseize Lutri. Pass the turn. Opponent considers. They get an island. They put Chart a Course into the grave. They draw another island. Alright, pass the turn. I would really prefer to be able to cast my spells, but they have a frickin' Force Spike, and it's really throwing me. I guess yeah, you know what? I would rather them counter this than counter Shared Fate, so go ahead and Disruption me. Yep, that's fine. Okay, we know you're holding a Forked Bolt. We draw River of Tears. Play River of Tears, pass the turn. No reason to rush on the Archmage's Charm, none at all. Opponent draws a Spell Pierce. How rude! Alright, we are going to cast this in hopes that our opponent casts Spell Pierce. Because all we need is a land, and if we actually cast Shared Fate from this position, we win. That is not a land. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps and draws Baron. Tolarian Archmage. Turn up to one other target creature or planeswalker its owner's hand. No targets. And they pass. We untap. Oh no. Oh, we were so, like, oh my gosh, alright. Opponent is not drawing anything substantial. One thing about Telepathy is it does give you a lot of reassurance. Like, so generally in games against control decks, I personally get really demoralized. Like, if my opponent has like 5 cards in hand, it's like, oh gosh, they've got like 3 counter spells and, you know, God knows what else. But at least, you know, if your opponent's top deck in bad, you get to know. Alright, pass the turn. Really need that land. Remand is not what we want to see our opponent have. They go to combat, attack us for 2. At least opponent's deck is a fun deck. We draw a River of Tears. If I play Shared Fate, they just remand it, but I still have to play Shared Fate. They 100% remand this. But the alternate, like, we have to hope they remand it and don't draw a spell. Okay, they draw a Counterspell. That's, oh gosh, that's even worse. The ideal was they remand, they just, like, draw another land. So now we have to draw, like, land and Duress. Okay, we get an Opt. So start with Opt. Bloodstained Mire. I will draw Bloodstained Mire, because Bloodstained Mire can stop the bleeding. Fetch with Bloodstained Mire. Get a Swamp. Oh! I was supposed to fetch on my opponent's turn, because they could Counterspell, and I can't. Well, never mind. Opponent just F6'd. Opponent draws Spell Snare. So they can win the Counterspell fight. Play Watery Grave tapped. Pass the turn. There's some notion I actually should have shocked there. I'm still going to cast this because I want them to give up a Counterspell. Oh, I tapped very incorrectly. Whatever. Okay, show me the Counterspell. Alright, and we're only doing that because we have multiple Shared Fates. Opponent draws a Skewer the Critics. Well, it's a good thing I didn't shock that Watery Grave, or we'd be just dead. We would be at 1. Inquisition. Okay, 1, 2, 5. Play Shared Fate. And then Inquisition you. We'll take Skewer the Critics. And that should be the game. They don't have a way to win. We've already gotten rid of their companion, which I did now realize makes Shared Fate significantly worse. But they have only 2 points of direct damage, and we are sitting at a high enough life total that it doesn't matter. But we've got the lock, and we know we have the lock because we can see our opponent's hand. Opponent scoops. All right, hey, we got a game. Okay, so Surgical Extraction is the worst thing in the universe versus the Singleton deck. It's like super bad. What do we want here? I think I'm actually going to drop Damnation, and we'll bring in Mystical Dispute. Is Mystical Dispute or Flusterstorm better? Mystical Dispute is better in a Counterspell fight, I think. I'll drop a Telepathy. I'll bring in a Duress. I will bring in a Thoughtseize. I'll bring in a couple of Mystical Disputes. Oh, I don't know, actually. With the additional hand hate, let's drop the Telepathy. Okay, this is a good hand. We will keep this hand. Opponent starts with a Flooded Strand, cracks it, shocks a Steam Vents, and plays a Fairy Seer. So they only have 3 cards left in hand. They mulligan twice. That's actually really bad news for them. We draw a Drown in the Loch, play Polluted Delta, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They play a Spire Bluff Canal into a Gitu Lava Runner. Okay. They go to combat, attack us for 1. We take 1, go to 19. Crack Polluted Delta, get a Watery Grave, untap, play an island, pass the turn. We could Drown in the Loch either of their creatures, or we could Counterspell something else. They play an island, they go to combat, they attack for 2. Okay, I'm going to Drown in the Loch the Lava Runner, because it represents more damage over time. The reason I played an island and not a swamp is because I'm holding Archmage's Charm, by the way. I did not state my reasoning out loud. Play a swamp. Let's go ahead and give him the old Thoughtseize here. I've only got 2 cards in hand. Just like a Click or a Brazen Borrower, maybe. Prismari Command, 2 damage, make a treasure. That's fine. Mana Leak. Alright, take Mana Leak from them. Pass the turn. I wonder if they're playing Rune Snag. That's another one of my favorite cards. It's not a great card, but I love it. Used to be a Battle of Wits all-star until they printed actual Counterspell. Firebolt. I do not care about a Firebolt. We will kill the fairy. Because now we should be able to keep the board clear with our with our counter spells. Okay, we get a Bloodstained Mire. Play Polluted Delta, pass the turn. This leaves up Archmage's Charm. So we want our opponent to either tap out to put Lutri in their hand, or play an irrelevant spell. And I think Curse Catcher counts as an irrelevant spell, because it cannot counter Shared Fate. So, do I count? If I counterspell this, they can get Lutri. But that's all they can do. We will still have an Archmage's Charm. Let's play it safe and counter the 1/1. Opponent's going to put Lutri in their hand. That's fine. Okay. Crack Polluted Delta. Get a Watery Grave, tapped. The only thing that would stop me from playing Shared Fate is if I drew a hand hate spell that could take Lutri, I think. So, Inquisition Lutri. They are completely blank now. Okay. We've gotten our opponent to cast 1 with nothing. They are fully hellbent. Let's draw some cards. Okay. Let's get another Watery Grave. And let's play a Shared Fate. Pass the turn. Opponent is now only drawing answers. We will eventually draw enough threats to win the game. Yeah, there's no reason not to play out lands. Okay, we draw a Counterspell. Play another one of their islands, pass the turn. Okay, we draw a Flooded Strand. I'm not going to play Flooded Strand. I'll just wait. Oh, Shared Fate also prevents you from losing due to decking. So, you cannot mill out with Shared Fate. Alright, let's cast a Chart a Course. I gotta discard my Fatal Push, but that doesn't matter. All the lands in the world. Pass the turn. Okay, let's go ahead and opt. We can control what our opponent draws this turn. Yeah, you can draw a hand hate spell. I cannot cast Light Up the Stage as I have not drawn their red mana yet. Past the turn. Opponent now has an Inquisition of Kozilek, which is actually completely useless. It is a prowess trigger. We draw a Soulscar Mage, but can't do anything with it. We have to draw our opponent's red mana before we can do anything. Odds are our opponent's going to have a whole bunch of, you know, counter spells and whatnot. Okay, let's go ahead and Archmage's Charm. I think they're scooping. Yep, they scooped. Hey, we got a round. All right, I'll see you guys in round 4. All right, welcome back to round 4, everybody. And, I think I would prefer to mulligan that hand. This hand is quite a bit better. I will keep. I'm going to put back a Counterspell. I think we're going to need Damnation against most decks. More than we'll need a second Counterspell. Lots of decks these days playing creatures. Inquisition. You going to take my Telepathy or my Counterspell? You going to take the Do-Nothing spell or the Counterspell? Vintage playable Telepathy? Does it scare you enough? Okay, that's what I thought. Our opponent only has 5 cards in hand. Let's go ahead and shock Watery Grave and play Telepathy. Lantern? Oh my gosh, is this Lantern control? If they find out we're Shared Fate, we're done. We should have kept the hand that had Shared Fate in it. That was actually the correct play. We just have to hope they don't mill it, basically. Oh, this matchup's going to be miserable. They can't mill us. They have to, like, Pyrite Spellbomb us to death. They get a second Saga. Or, I mean, beat down with Saga tokens is always, you know, a possibility. They play a Lantern. We untap. We draw Inquisition. There's a Fatal Push on top of our deck. So, play Bloodstained Mire. Let's go ahead and Inquisition our opponent's Ensnaring Bridge and pass the turn. I know their hand. They know what we're both drawing. Okay, so they draw Saga. They play Spire. I do not want to draw Fatal Push. So I'm going to go get another Watery Grave here. Okay. Another Bloodstained Mire is not great, but it's okay. Play Bloodstained Mire, pass the turn. Opponent going to make a token. They untap. They draw Saga. They make a token. I'm going to go ahead and fetch now so that they don't Pithing Needle me. There's a Telepathy on top of my deck. That's exactly what I wanted to draw. Another Telepathy. So now the problem is we're only going to get 1 Damnation, and our opponent has a second Saga. They're not going to let us draw Shared Fate. We have to Damnation this turn. There is no other choice. So kill the tokens. Pass the turn. Opponent's going to mill Archmage's Charm. Okay, Polluted Delta on top of our deck. Opponent draws a land. Ancient Stirrings. They get a Codex Shredder. They also have a Codex Shredder on top. They pass. We draw Polluted Delta. Play Polluted Delta. I don't think I need to play a redundant Telepathy. Pass the turn. Opponent makes a token. They draw a Codex Shredder. Now they have 2 Codex Shredders, and they're about to make a token and get a third. So the problem with Lantern Control is the fact that we have, like, nothing that interacts with their game plan. Pixis, okay. They play a Glimmer Void, they play a Shredder, and they play a Shredder. So basically now my opponent has 5 Shredder effects. So we have to have running draws of 5 cards that end with something that can kill all of these tokens, which we don't have. So I think we have lost. I think this matchup is like a 0% to win. And now they know what we are. We're Shared Fate. But Shared Fate doesn't even help us here. So I should have just conceded. I should not have let them read Shared Fate. I should have conceded the instant I recognized that there was no other way to win left. Okay. So out of the sideboard, I want Duress, I want Thoughtseize, I want the Surgical Extractions. Telepathy is not going to be very good here. Counterspell is actually kind of bad. I think it's better for us to be proactive. I am going to keep the Fatal Pushes and stuff because we do have to kill at least some number of tokens. And we're going to run it back. I really dislike that Saga is a land that can win the game by itself. There are several lands like that. The problem with lands that win the game is either like Valakut, where they win the game on the spot immediately. And I think Valakut in that regard is even more egregious. But I dislike that Saga... Like, we lost the last game by no other reason than the fact my opponent had Saga and then could just keep us from drawing anything. And it's such a low barrier to winning the game. Like, we're a very interactive deck. We are a pile of kill and counter spells, and we just cannot answer Saga. And we don't have an easy answer, really. I mean, other lands that win the game, so things like, I don't know, Stensia Bloodhall, Nephalia Drownyard, like, those kinds of lands take many, many turns and a ton of mana to win the game. Like, Saga is just, oh, you wanted a ton of power? Here's a ton of power. In 3 turns, you've created, like, 2 7/7s, you know, for the low price of playing Saga. You know, it's got a really powerful curve. So we'll play first. Alright, I will keep this. Honestly, if we could get a Surgical on Lantern, that would be really good. So lead on Duress. Lantern of Insight, and Surgical. So now the problem is, I can Surgical their Lantern of Insight. Okay, they were F6'd. And that's why I did it. I did it on my turn because I thought they were F6'd. Had I not done it on my turn, or had my opponent been paying attention, they could have Surgical'd their Singleton out of the grave and kept the one in their hand. But now they'll be blind milling, which basically stops their deck from being effective. Opponent said, guess I shouldn't have F6'd, wasn't expecting anything. Okay, the Inquisition are opt. We untap and draw Bloodchief's Thirst, play Bloodstained Mire, pass the turn. They play Spire of Industry. Ancient Stirrings. They find Saga. We draw a Thoughtseize. I am going to cast Thoughtseize. Opponent could Surgical something if they wanted to, but I'm not sure they would. Infernal Tutor, Prismatic Ending, Surgical Extraction. I'm going to take Infernal Tutor. They could actually Infernal Tutor for a second Saga, and then we would be in even bigger trouble. Pass the turn. They play Saga. We draw Drowned Catacomb, play it. The bad news, though, is with Surgical, all they have to do is mill 1 Shared Fate and we lose. Okay, we draw an Opt. So cast an Opt. I will draw an Archmage's Charm. Opponent can make a token here. They untap Saga. They make a token. Then they go and get probably just like a random Codex Shredder.
I'm really glad that this deck has died out in popularity, because playing against it with most decks is just complete misery. I'm kind of glad that it still exists. It's just way worse than it was. They get a Pyrite Spellbomb. They play a land. They go to combat. They hit us for 3. Then they pass. Okay. Let's go ahead and draw some cards. Island River of Tears is not really what I was hoping to draw. Definitely not followed up by a Drowned Catacomb either. So, kill a token. Kill a token. Pass the turn. Opponent's going to cycle the Spell Bomb. They untap, play a land, and pass. We're still drawing lands. Play Watery Grave, pass the turn. So Prismatic Ending they could actually answer an onboard Shared Fate with, provided, of course, they have an artifact, which they will. We continue to brick. Okay, opponent baubles our top deck. They Thoughtseize and see we have nothing. We basically have to draw Shared Fate before they draw a Saga. And ideally, after we take a look at their hand with like a Duress, they're going to Surgical Archmage's Charm. That does make a lot of our future draws worse. Opponent takes a good long look at our deck. We continue to draw nothing. Opponent plays Academy Ruins. Okay, crack Polluted Delta. Get a Watery Grave. Well, at least it's not a land. Opponent does not Academy anything back to the top of their deck. They draw another Saga, though. That's real bad. We draw nothing. Oh my gosh. Alright, we've actually lost. Yeah, we definitely need some tutors added to this deck. I can kill 1 token and they're going to make 3 more. That is unfortunate. Alright, let's see if we can get half our entry back. I'll see you guys in round 5. Alrighty, welcome to round 5. Let's do this. Alright, we're going to lead on River of Tears, Inquisition, Unearth, Otherworldly Gaze, and Stitcher's Supplier. So this is definitely the self-mill deck. So take Stitcher's Supplier, I guess. They'll just unearth it instead, but Prodigious Growth. Prodigious Growth? Hang on a minute. What am I playing against? Enchanted creature is 7/7 and trample? Are you playing a 6-mana meme card in your dredge deck, sir? Or ma'am? Oh my gosh. Okay, well, if I die to Prodigious Growth, I guess I'm dying to Prodigious Growth. Alright. The legendary 1 in 4 bracket. Well, I mean, I can't say too much because I got here. You'd imagine this is where Kano hangs out a lot, but actually no, not as much as he used to. Now, the good news is Drowned in the Loch is going to be just actual counterspell here. I want to play Stitcher's Supplier. Yeah, if you're milling yourself this hard, I actually care. Let's get a Watery Grave. Drown in the Loch. Oops. This is if you played a land, not if a land entered the battlefield. Alrighty then. Play an island. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They draw. They play a Scalding Tarn, which is not something we've seen. Have they only played fetch lands? I think they actually played this one. They are now passing. I have no idea what I'm playing against. Oh, this could be... what is it? Herald of the Storm? The 3-mana 3/2 with haste that says you, like, attach an aura to it from the grave. Something like that? Could this be Herald of the Storm combo? Play an island. Inquisition. Unearth, unearth. Pass the turn. That must be what it is. The 3-mana 3/2 with haste that says you can attach. I don't know if it's any number or 1 aura. If it is just 1 aura, maybe this is their backup, like, Eldrazi Conscription. Because I know Eldrazi Conscription is not expensive. Opponent is going to unearth Stitcher's Supplier. We took an unearth from them. Counterspell that. Okay, we draw another Drown in the Loch. Play Bloodstained Mire, pass the turn. Opponent cracks Polluted Delta, gets a Watery Grave. They untap. Play a Blood Crypt. And they pass. Crack Mire, get a Watery Grave. Untap. You know what? I don't want to Thoughtseize, because if their last card is a land, I don't want them to have that Prodigious Growth in the grave. The only thing I can think of is they're going to reanimate it somehow. Like, we're safe with 2 Drown in the Lochs, I imagine.
So I'm just going to wait. 3 mana. Probably Prismari Command? Oh, I'm good. Opponent wants to go looting? No. I don't want that Prodigious Growth in the grave. I'm going to avoid it for a little bit longer if I can. They're going to persist the supplier. It's just 2 mana, mill yourself for 3. Or mill yourself for 6. Because it enters the battlefield and immediately dies. Storm Herald. I called it Herald of the Storm. I was close. There is an Eldrazi conscription in the grave now. Oh, we drew an Archmage's Charm. Okay, I am going to fire off a Thoughtseize now. Double Prodigious Growth. I would never have guessed. So opponent is looking for a Persist or an Unearth. I do like this combo. I think it's just a little bit too grave heavy for my liking. If you're doing a lot of grave shenanigans, you can do cooler stuff. Like zombies. Sorry, I just really like zombies. But no, I actually think this is a pretty good combo. If you can get a Eldrazi conscription out very quickly, like turn 3 quickly, you basically won. Do I care about that? What does Storm Herald actually say? Exile any number... Oh, you can equip any number of auras. That's actually huge. Alright, they can go looting. They make a treasure, they dump the Prodigious Growth, and another conscription. We draw lands. Untap. Thoughtseize. Let's see what they kept. Supplier. Go into the grave. Pass the turn. We're going to leave that Bloodstained Mire uncracked because of Fatal Push. Okay, opponent draws a card, keeps it in hand. They pass, we untap. We draw Bloodchief's Thirst, which is not going to be useful this game. Our opponent wins at instant speed, I'm pretty sure, because this is haste. Play Watery Grave. Pass. Opponent passes. Draw another Bloodstained Mire. Pass the turn. Glimpse the Unthinkable, targeting us. Oh, you know, if that mills all our shared fates, that kills us. And there's a decent chance, knowing me, that would happen. So I'm actually going to counter that. I don't want my opponent to know. 10-10 Trample and Annihilator 2. 7-7 Trample. So we are going to let them attach auras, because we want to get the auras dealt with as well. And they made the mistake of attaching all of them, which is wholly unnecessary, but seriously cool. Crack Bloodstained Mire. Get a Watery Grave. What is this? Battle Mastery? I mean, that's awesome, but nope. What do you do to a 37-36 Eldrazi Lovecraftian demigod? You push it off a cliff. Oh, man. Okay. Well, the thing is, like, the only scary aura that's left is Battle Mastery. I am going to leave that Bloodstained Mire uncracked in case I draw another Fatal Push. This deck really has problems drawing lands. Inquisition. Prismari Command. They're going to loot and make a treasure. Man, I wonder if they have Unburial Rights. Is this just command? I'll counter it unless I pay 2. No, I won't pay. Pass the turn. Oh, come on. Show me Shared Fate. Telepathy. Well, at least there won't be any doubt anymore. Show me that card in your hand. It's a Blood Crypt. I knew you were sandbagging. The flavor text on Telepathy is relevant. I was putting more stuff in the grave. That's the most disappointing thing about learning Telepathy is finding out how boring people really are. Don't you do it. Oh, you had to do it. They milled 1 Shared Fate. Thankfully, it was not all 4. Actually, that did increase our chance of drawing a Shared Fate, I believe. 4 out of 32 as opposed to 3 out of 22. That 1 and 8 versus 1 and 7. Something like that. And 1 and 7 is slightly better than 1. I would really like to draw things that aren't lands, though. Another Glimpse the Unthinkable, huh? What's funny is, we can't mill out once we have Shared Fate, but until that point, we can. So we have to be worried. Oh my god. Pass the turn. Opponent draws an Eldrazi Conscription, and they can almost hard cast it. Oh, that's terrifying. Okay, we're gonna do some deck thinning. I feel like at this point it matters.
Get our Singleton Swamp. This Bloodstained Mire can no longer fetch anything, so it's just a Revolt trigger at this point. Okay, we have no fetchable lands left in the deck. I should have actually checked before. I cracked the... Oh my god, that Polluted Delta, but... How many lands in a row is that? There is a charm for my opponent. They only have 14 cards left in their deck. Drew an Archmage's Charm, which does provide some semblance of safety. This opponent's probably going to loot with Izzet Charm here. Yep, they found a Storm Herald, which is what I'm glad I saved the Izzet Charm. I'm glad I didn't just fire it off. You untap and draw Bloodstained Mire. They play Storm Herald. We unfortunately must counter it and cannot use our card draw. Opponent should have one Storm Herald left. We drew another Archmage's Charm past the turn. They may actually end up dying to milling themselves. Show me the final Storm Herald. Okay, so they probably have like some Unearths or something. And we drew a Fatal Push. And we do have a Revolt trigger sitting on board. So I think all of the Unearths have been used. But they probably have... No! No, not Glimpse! Oh, don't do it! We still have a Shared Fate in the deck. We still have a Shared Fate in the deck. Do we have any way to mill our opponent? Archmage's Charm. All of our Archmage's Charms are in the grave. I don't know if my opponent has a way to win. We might be stuck at a draw. We don't have a way to win. We have one Shared Fate. I could gain life, or I could exile the Storm Heralds. I think it's technically correct to do so. Whoop. So we've exiled 3. Maybe I should have drawn cards, just to make sure that I got the Shared Fate. Yeah, I guess I have to start drawing cards, because I have to hit Shared Fate or I lose. We have no way to use our grave other than Cling to Dust. Okay, there it is. Play Shared Fate. We'll exile the last Storm Herald, because Persist is only your graveyard, and so is Unearth. So we can't reanimate a Storm Herald. We have to hope that they have like a Stitcher Supplier and we can win in 20 turns. I have never been in a situation like this. Ever. Opponent exiles one of our 2 remaining cards face down. They just have to have anything that can deal any creature. Any creature wins us the game. I mean, Otherworldly Gaze is not a creature. Oh, I should not have cast that! I should not have cast that because my opponent could manipulate their top deck with it. Oh, gosh. I'm going to put Damnation in the grave. Pass the turn. Oh, that was a huge, huge punt. They could force a draw. They don't draw anything because we don't have anything on our deck. We get an Unearth. That doesn't matter. We can't cycle it. We have nothing to target with it. Are all their Stitcher Suppliers in the grave? We draw Prodigious Growth, which we can't cast at all. No, don't do it! Don't do it! Oh no! There's no way to win! Nobody can win! Ha! we have made it to the end game. The worst part, we're just gonna go back and forth F6ing. There's no way to win. Oh, I think one of their last cards may have been Stitcher Supplier, too. If I had not cast that Otherworldly Gaze. Oh, man. Oh, opponent's like, well, you have less time, you're going to lose. I was like, oh, I'm going to concede, opponent. There's no need to be a dick about it. Yeah, there's no need to be a dick about it. I'll concede. I'm not worried about 50 play points. I've never had that happen. So let's see. I'll bring in Surgicals. Because that should actually make a huge difference. Thoughtseize coming in for sure. Damnation, Bloodchief's Thirst is like useless because they're going to do whatever they're going to do at instant speed. Flusterstorm is useful. I think we cut a Telepathy and an Opt. We'll try it like this. 24 lands might be too many. This deck might want 21 or 22. But we are intending to play lands until we get to 5, so it's a little bit awkward. I actually may not be able to win this match if I Surgical Storm Herald. There may not be a way for me to win. I will play first. Yeah, I mean, sure. That awkward moment when you can't win with Shared Fate because your opponent has no win conditions either. Oh, we really should have a companion in this deck for that situation exactly. There's got to be a companion we can run.
like Kahira or something. Opponent fetches and shocks for setup for an otherworldly gaze. We untap, play Drowned Catacomb, pass the turn. Okay, opponent otherworldly gaze. They put an Eldrazi conscription in the grave. They untap, draw Stitcher's Supply. Now, Stitcher's Supplier, I am actually going to counter. And I should use Counterspell here, because Drown in the Loch can hit stuff on board. Okay, we drew Shared Fate, which is excellent. If we can play Shared Fate before our opponent gets to a second land, I'm pretty sure we will. Okay, they drew a Bloodstained Mire, so that is no longer the case. So, Polluted Delta for Watery Grave. Untap. We draw an Opt. Let's go ahead and Opt. I will take the 5th land, even though that always feels like a mistake. Opting a land to the top when you're already holding a land kind of sucks. Okay, opponent's going to crack Bloodstained Mire. I'm like 99% sure they're going to Izzet Charm and cycle. Okay, so they ditch 2 Prodigious Growths, then untap. They draw Storm Herald, which if they can't play Storm Herald because they don't have enough mana. And we cannot cast Shared Fate because they have Izzet Charm. We can cast Shared Fate if I Surgical Izzet Charm, but that seems like suicide. Okay, they're going to go looting. They ditch Growth Storm Herald. So we just Surgical Storm Herald, and that should be the game. Could have waited until their draw step, but honestly, they could have gotten something nasty out. The opponent gets an Otherworldly Gaze. They play a Stitcher's Supplier. They can't unearth it, so I'm just going to go ahead and counter the Otherworldly Gaze in response. Put 2 more stuffs in the grave. We untap, draw River of Tears, play River of Tears, Shared Fate. So now they can untap and they can unearth Stitcher's Supplier, but I can also Fatal Push it. They can cast Kolaghan's Command, and they can cast Glimpse if they draw one of our lands. Well, they glimpse us, but that doesn't matter. The problem is, I'm stuck trying to win with potentially a Stitcher's Supplier, like with an Eldrazi conscription on it or something. Alright, well, we drew a Prismari Command that we can't cast, so pass the turn. Opponent does get our Polluted Delta. So they can Kolaghan's Command. And I think they can, yeah, they pick up Stitcher's Supplier, and they make us discard Fatal Push. Yep, that's fine. Okay, we untap. We get an Eldrazi conscription. Well, that's part 2. We need a red land first. Opponent plays a Stitcher's Supplier, mills themselves. Unearths Stitcher's Supplier, mills Stitcher's Supplier. They may not have a Stitcher's Supplier left for me to win with. Otherworldly Gaze, they're going to manipulate our top deck. This is a really miserable matchup. Okay, we drew a Scalding Tarn, but that's not a red land. That is a blue land. I have to somehow draw my opponent's last Stitcher's Supplier. If I do, I should be able to win, because my opponent keeps drawing my lands. Opponent says, why Shared Fate? It's fun. We draw another Scalding Tarn, sure. At least we're making land drops, because we are holding an Eldrazi conscription. Pass the turn. Opponent attacks us for 2, we go to 9. Okay, we draw a red land. Pass the turn. When it goes to combat, attacks us for 2. Go to 5. Untap. Opponent's going to Otherworldly Gaze. Try and manipulate their top deck again. Oh, I guess I can't. I was going to go... Oh, no, that's just draw 2 cards, isn't it? So, kill Stitcher's Supplier, draw 2 cards. Problem is they could mill Stitcher's Supplier. They did not. We had to glimpse the unthinkable. Alright, pass the turn. Fun thing about Shared Fate is draw 2, discard 2 becomes draw 2. Opponent plays our island. They attack us for 1, take us to 4. Another Otherworldly Gaze. I mean, this is effectively Time Walk. Did they just put another Supplier into the grave? They did. That's game. Supplier was the only other way to win. That matchup was really miserable. Well, what did we learn? I think this deck needs a companion of some kind, and whether that means playing, like, green or white lands for Kahira, or another equally playable... Like, we could technically play Luris, because we have Telepathy. Like, we could do Luris Bauble, actually, in this deck. That would... No, we can't do Luris, because we have Shared Fate. Shared Fate's a 5-mana permanent. Although, if we could do Luris Bauble in this deck, it would be insane. We just can't. Let me take a look here. I really like this deck. It's definitely some people's definition of fun, but not others. So... Our options are like Yorion, which would make this deck way worse. Kahira, and that's it, really. We can't play Lutri, we can't play Obosh, we can't play Zerda, can't play Luris, can't play Gigantha. can't play Garuda, it's literally those two. And Yorion would make this deck way less playable than it already is. And so it's basically Kahira. We have to splash white or splash green for Kahira. Some kind of 5-color mana in this deck would be good, because we need to be able to cast our opponent's spells post Shared Fate, and that's a big issue with the current list, is we have to draw their lands, and we have to then draw their spells, or either or, but we have to do both. So 5-color mana in this deck would matter a little bit if we could get away with it. So like Reflecting Pool or Exotic Orchard or something like that. A lot of people play blue, a lot of people play black, so Exotic Orchard might be the way to go. The only problem with doing that is if our opponent has cards stuck in their hand that they can't cast because they're missing a color of mana, potentially that gives it to them. But that's already kind of a rare situation. We want our opponent to be as close to Hellbent as possible before we play Shared Fate. The other issue is, if you run up against a deck that has 1 win condition and you surgical it, you're going to lose. Because there's nothing to share fate. The share fate was sit there eternally and be unable to die, which was quite awful. So take that as you will. I have never been in that position, so this was a new experience. Mixim, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm sorry it didn't do better. I played pretty well. I made a couple of mistakes here and there, but I think Kahira is what this deck needs to actually win the game. The problem is if we play Kahira, like, so in the situation that we were in against our last opponent, right? We then, like, let's say we get Kahira. We get Kahira out of the sideboard, and then our opponent just goes, okay, Counterspell, because you're running 19 of them. Like, it's just, they're going to have drawn the answers to our creature, right? We can't play a win condition that's a land. We can't play a win condition that's like an instant or sorcery, because our opponent would draw it. So I'm really not sure what we can do to guarantee the win post Shared Fate. Now, in theory, we just play our opponent's deck and we beat them with their deck. And maybe the situation we were in round 5 is not something I should ever be worried about. But I think adding some kind of rainbow mana to this deck would be better. Now, if it could be a Gemstone Mine, it could be, like I said, an Exotic Orchard, something, but I'm not sure. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Mixim, I hope you enjoyed this video. You're all wonderful human beings. Mixim, thank you for the deck redemption on Twitch. That's where this came from. If you haven't already, you should follow me on Twitch. Same username over there as you find me on here. I stream Wednesdays in the afternoon, sometimes later in the evening, and we have a lot of good time. We generally play Modern, or we play like Vintage Cube, or just have a lot of fun. Stream deck's been great. Last stream VOD was great. If you want to see more wins with this deck, you should check out the most recent stream VOD that came out prior to this video. And probably be Tron coming up next, but I've also got 3 or 4 other deck request redemption things I gotta do. So, anyway, I'll see you guys next time. Bye! Hey, just wanted to give a shout out to my patrons for the month of December. Thank you all so much. And if you want to join this list of patrons and have your name in the credits here at the end of the video, please click the link for Patreon in the description below. Thank you.